everyone, welcome to this week's Python app development tutorial part 3, where we are going to take our previous app which we created, this basic login screen which is standard kivy, and we're going to convert it to kivy MD, which will then have a bit of a better mobile view. So before we get started, I just want to say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so now and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of these tutorials going forward. So what we'll do to convert this app is I'm just going to close it down here for now, and then we need to make a few modifications. So the first one would be to just rename this to login screen, and we want to update this method over here. I'll just call that login screen, and over here we need to instantiate login screen instead, and we'll just call this login screen, and we can save that, and then that should still work. But now what we're going to do is we're going to convert this over to kivy MD. So the first thing we want to do is we just want to import a few other things here. So from kivy MD dot uix dot screen, we want to import MD screen for one. We also need to import kivy MD app, so kivy MD dot app import MD app. So now that's all we're going to need just to get started. So what we'll do over here is we need to first of all change the injection type to MD app over here. We need to make sure that we are adding our widget, and we need to make sure that we are using the correct screen types. So basically for these apps you can still use screen, which is fine, and we just needed to make sure that MD app is added here. So now we're going to just modify this login screen to basically look more like a kivy MD app. So I'm actually going to just rename this to something a lot simpler. So I'm just going to say login just to make things easier for us, and then we can now start converting this to a kivy MD login screen. So spacing is fine, padding is fine, we're going to leave that, row is fine. Padding, we'll add some more padding over here because we just want to lay it out a little bit nicer, and then spacing as well. So spacing like that. We'll leave the row default. We'll get rid of these inputs and labels because we'll replace it with the kivy MD version. So the first one is an MD text field, which basically is a label and a text field in one, because it has this hint text, and we'll just put in email over here. Then we just need to give it an ID, so we'll just make it username value like that, and then we can create our password field. So this is a text field, but we'll set it as a password field, so hint text again, and we'll just make password over here. For our hint text we'll do a value, so we'll make it password value, and then finally we'll just set password to true to make sure that it masks our input. Then our button, we're going to just get rid of this one, and we're going to use the MD rectangle button. Rectangle button, and it's a MD rectangle flat button actually, like that, and then we'll just put in the text, and that will become login like that, and then we can have an on-press event which we'll add a little later on. So let's save that and let's see if this works. So we have an email over here and a password over here, and we have a login button. So now what we just want to make sure of is that we created this correctly so that it just follows below one another. So we need to modify our rows a little bit. So we're going to make 3 rows. I'm going to make 1 column, and I'm just going to move this into this grid layout so that it falls into one of these rows. So let's save that and run that. So you'll now see it's a nice little login screen where it's two fields below one another with a login button. So that's great. So if you modify it like this, you'll see that it looks a little bit more like a mobile app now. So close that. Now what we'll do is we're going to create another screen just so that we can get a bit of a login screen going. So we'll create a failed login screen. So to do that, we'll just use these brackets again to create a widget. So failed login screen, what we'll call it. So, and then we'll have a box layout like so, and we'll make it an orientation of vertical again. Vertical. And then we'll do the same as all the others. We'll just add some padding and spacing. So we'll do 10 and spacing of 10. Here we can do an MD label just to do something very basic. And we'll just make the text say login failed. And basically we'll then just have a button which will allow us to go back to our login screen. So we'll create an MD rectangle flat button like so. And then we'll just put some text in there which makes sense. So we'll just say back to login. And then what we'll do is it will just be a very basic on press event. So it'll take the root, the manager, so the screen manager, current, and it'll set it to login. So basically that little login we have here, it will know to transition back to the login screen. Now we need to basically go and add this as a basically as a widget to our screen. So we can do something very simple here. We're going to do the exact same thing we did with login screen. Just need to create a class. And we'll just make this failed login screen. So you can copy this and just make it exactly the same as that. We could actually copy this SM add widget and we can do something very similar. So just grab this failed login screen like that, and then we'll just call this failed login. Now to show you how this can be transitioned, we'll just create an event on this button. So something very similar to this. So like that, but we'll call it failed login. And let's run this now. So we click login, you'll see it goes to login failed and it transitions back to login. So basically that's how you can create multiple screens just using kivy MD and the usual screen manager that ships with regular kivy. So basically guys, that's where I'm going to end this week's tutorial. In next week's tutorial, we'll be building out more screens and we will possibly be looking at the REST API, which will be able to call to actually do a login and some authentication. So thanks again for watching and I'll see you in the next video.